Good evening, everyone. Those who have joined from all over the places today with us, I welcome all of you on behalf of Conflict and Resilience Research Institute, Canada. Today, our webinar title is Under the Shadow: Unpacking Foreign Interference in Canada's Academia, Democracy and Diaspora. My name is Kausar Ahmed, and I'm honored to serve as your moderator for the critical discussion this evening. This event is the first in a series of webinars organized by the Conflict and Resilience Research Institute Canada, aiming to explore the multifaceted impacts of foreign interference on our nation's core institutions and communities. Before we delve into our discussion, I would like to acknowledge that we are gathered on the territorial land of Anishinaabe, Cree, Ojibwe, Dakota, and Dene people, and on the original land of Métis Nation. We all are promise-bound to work together in the true spirit of truth and reconciliation. The audience, foreign interference poses a significant threat to the sovereignty, integrity, and security of Canada. Recent reports by the Senate Standing Committee on National Security and Defense and the Public Inquiry Commission on Foreign Interference have underscored the pressing need to address this issue with utmost seriousness. The National Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians' special report on foreign interference in Canada's democratic processes and institutions, released in June, provides a comprehensive analysis of foreign interference activities targeting Canada's democratic processes, academic institutions, and diaspora communities. This report builds on the committee's 2019 review, which was a broader examination of foreign interference in Canada. It included a detailed review of the main threat actors, their motivations, and foreign interference tactics and targets, and an examination of the government's response to the threat, including cooperation and deconfliction, resourcing and prioritization, and finally, legislative frameworks. The report calls for robust legislative measures, enhanced cybersecurity protocols, and increased public awareness to safeguard our national interests. The audience. On September 7, 2023, the Government of Canada established the Public Inquiry into Foreign Interference in Federal Electoral Processes and Democratic Institutions. Justice Marie-Josée Hogg, a judge from the Quebec Court of Appeal, was appointed commissioner. The commissioner's report, released on 3rd May 2024, delves into the pervasive nature of foreign interference and its impact on Canada's socio-political landscape. The Commission's findings emphasize the need for a coordinated national strategy encompassing federal, provincial, and municipal efforts to effectively counter these threats. The report also stresses the importance of fostering resilience within our communities, promoting media literacy, and strengthening our democratic institutions. Today's webinar aims to unpack the complex dimensions of foreign interference in Canada, focusing on three critical areas: academia, democracy, and diaspora. Our distinguished panel of experts today will provide an in-depth insights into the mechanisms of foreign interference, its consequences, and the strategies to mitigate the impact. The format of today's webinar will include a brief presentation by each of our panelists, followed by a moderated discussion and a question and answer session. We encourage you to engage actively, pose your questions through the chat functions and the social media platforms, and share your thoughts. Without further ado, let me introduce our esteemed panelists today. First, we have Dr. Maria Chung, who has taught at the University of Manitoba for 26 years and retired in January this year from her full professorship and associate dean capacity at the Faculty of Social Work. She is still active in research and publications and is an advisor to Conflict and Resilience Research Institute Canada. She represents the Falun Gong Human Rights Group to join Human Rights Coalition, which is granted a full participant status at the public inquiry on foreign interference led by Justice Marie-José Hogg since September 2023. Professor Maria Chung, welcome to the webinar. Next, we have Professor Benjamin Fung, who is a Canada Research Chair in Data Mining for Cybersecurity, a full professor of the School of Information Studies at McGill University. Professor Benjamin received a PhD degree in computing science from Simon Fraser University in 2007. Collaborating closely with the national defense, law enforcement, transportation, and healthcare sectors, he has published over 200 refereed articles that span across the research forums of data mining, machine learning, privacy protection, and cybersecurity with over 15,000 citations. Professor Fung is a licensed professional engineer in software engineering, and you can find him in the university website. Professor Benjamin, welcome to the show. And in addition, we are also very happy to have with us this evening our Fulbright MyTech Research Assistant, Jessica Case, and she's a senior at the University of North Georgia, where she's getting her BA in International Relations with a concentration on Europe. She volunteers for a not-for-profit that hosts Model United Nations Conference, where she served as a director, and she has joined CREEC just over a month ago for a very brief period. Welcome, Jessica, on behalf of everyone today. And she has taken the responsibility to moderate the Q&A session at the last part of our webinar. Dear audience, just to also brief you that each panelist, first starting with Professor Maria, will present their perspectives and research findings for approximately 10 to 15 minutes. And then we'll go into the moderated Q&A session. And finally, if we have time, we'll take questions from our audience. So I think it is time to welcome Dr. Maria Chung for her presentation. And Maria, floor is yours, ma'am. And let me put your slides up quickly so that you can start your presentation. And here you are.
Thank you, Dr. Amit, and it's nice to present this topic at the webinar tonight. As a participant through the Human Rights Coalition, I participated quite fully in the public inquiry on foreign interference. So tonight I like to share and provide my experience and observation on the ongoing public inquiry on foreign interference. I basically live streamed the 2 rounds of hearings since January this year, while our coalition councils were in the room asking questions of the participants. I want to cover 3 points. So next slide, thank you. The 3 points that I want to cover tonight is, first, a diaspora perspective has emerged from this public inquiry. Second is affirmation of diaspora communities' experiences, particularly China or the PRC, I'll use the term interchangeably, is meddling our democratic system, including the 2 elections. Setting the parameters at the 2019 and 2021 federal elections, Commissioner Hogg's initial report in May recognized that foreign interference in the last 2 elections has tarnished Canada's electoral ecosystem, compromising some voters' rights to make independent choices, and that is a detriment to our democracy. From a diaspora angle, I find the public inquiry has opened a window to look at the extent of foreign interference in our country that is beyond the 2 elections. With my knowledge base and experience, I'll focus on China tonight. And the third aspect I want to cover is the impacts brought by the public inquiry, especially those related to diaspora communities. Next. I use a diaspora perspective to look at the issue of foreign interference, and I refer you to this article in the conversation that I wrote with Dr. Ahmed on the public inquiry, which was published just a month or two ago. So I put the link here, but probably it's hard for you to copy the link. So feel free to take a picture and search the title, New Commission Sheds Light on How Diaspora Communities Are Impacted by Foreign Interference. And in there, I capture diaspora perspective, which I like to give a definition tonight. So next. A diaspora community refers to a group of people who share a common origin, often stemming from a historical event such as migration, colonization, or forced displacement, and who have settled in various locations around the world. So basically, the dispersion of a people from their original homeland. While diaspora perspective refers to an analytical framework or theoretical approach that emphasizes the experiences, identities, and interactions of dispersed communities across geographical boundaries. Next. So this is a thesis report, and I'm going to introduce two documents, which are public documents in the public inquiry website. I do find a diaspora perspective has emerged from this public inquiry in its first stage, which is on fact-finding. It started with its initial round in January, February this year, when academics, former thesis heads, and related security agencies were called to discuss about the parameters and defined terms for the commission. Many underscored the need to hear from diaspora communities, and the commission followed so. And in the second round, which is a solid 10-day stage 1 hearing that took place in March and April this year, the commission started with a panel that made up of diaspora communities. And I just named the target groups targeted by PRC, included the Uyghur, Falun Gong, and a pro-democracy group based in Toronto that participated in the panel discussion. In this thesis report, I'd like you to take a look at the last paragraph in particular. The diaspora groups targeted by the CCP are primarily the Falun Gong, Tibetan, Uyghur democracy defenders of mainland China, and I add in Hong Kong as well, and also Taiwanese. And although these documents are redacted in some of the places, but this time we can see a lot of information provided by these documents. And the PRC is found to be the foremost perpetrator of foreign interference. Next. And this is a country report on PRC. The PRC strategies on foreign interference are considered sophisticated, pervasive, and persistent, and also clandestine, targeting government officials, electoral candidates, political organizations, and diaspora communities. And China is described as highly motivated and capable of interfering the democratic processes and institutions of Canada. I want to show you this country report on PRC from the Commission because it pinpoints the United Front Work Department as the main Chinese Communist Party, or the CCP organ, responsible for the coordination of global infiltration and foreign interference operations. It is attached to oversee missions of the Chinese embassy and consulates to control and influence the Chinese communities, to spread the positive narratives of the PRC, and is a major mechanism to suppress dissident groups in foreign countries, which I mentioned in the last slide. And back in early 2000s, Canadian media already alerted the United Front agents worked on behalf of the Chinese government to approach wealthy Chinese businessmen or business people, Chinese community leaders who were sympathetic to the regime, and many became proxies over the years. Vast majority of Chinese media outlets in Canada has been brought out to carry the CCP narratives. And foreign interference is intricately tied with transnational repression, as illustrated by the Chinese diaspora cases. I used the Falun Gong experience to illustrate how the CCP carries out its transnational repression and foreign interference of dissident groups in Canada. Next. Falun Gong is a peaceful spiritual and meditation group that has been heavily suppressed by the CCP since 1999. There are clear CCP directives to eradicate the group not only inside China, but also in foreign countries where practitioners reside. This is a report published by the Falun Dafa Association of Canada on foreign interference and repression last year. It detailed how Falun Gong practitioners are facing constant intimidation, harassment, cyber attack, physical and verbal assault, while they raise awareness about the persecution. Their families in China are harassed due to their activism. Next. This is a woman who appeared in Niagara Falls and Scarborough subway stations in Toronto, which are two very different places, right? She's the one who's being captured to harass the Falun Gong practitioners. When this elderly practitioner on my right explained to this lady what Falun Gong is about, truth, compassion, and tolerance, she not only ridiculed him, but also defamed Falun Gong and used assaults to him. She admitted that she's paid by the Chinese consulate to do so. Next. Falun Gong practitioners are under heavy surveillance by the CCP, even in Canada. They are constantly being taken picture of, like the picture on the left. Hundreds of banners were slit by CCP agents, constantly, weekly. Defamatory letters on the right is a sample, were sent to elected officials asking them to withdraw support to Falun Gong, and active practitioners were being impersonated, and weird emails were sent to government officials to demonize Falun Gong. There were many of these unsolicited letters that elected officials received over the years. Affected by disinformation spread by the CCP, hate propaganda, the group suffers from bigotry and silence in Canadian society. So far, the findings of the commissions gathered from security and intelligence agencies validate this group's experiences in foreign interference and repression. Next. The Commissioner's report acknowledges the injuries and harm that are suffered by diaspora communities directly impacted by foreign interference. These communities bear the brunt of foreign interference and left without protection. And from my understanding and conclusion, the system has failed them. The momentum created by the public inquiry triggered a number of effects that diaspora communities have advocated for years. Next. The interim report has not yet included the diaspora community's testimonies, but the diaspora communities in civil societies are already bringing an impact in Canadian society. Actually, this report caused a lot of attention recently, and I would see it as running parallelly with the Commissioner's report. This one by NCCOP, the National Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians, saying that some parliamentarians are semi-witting or wittingly participants in the efforts of foreign states to interfere in Canadian politics. So I see the two reports synchronized with each other. Next. I'm not going into the C-70, which is a bill that actually just passed today through the three stages of the House of Commons and Senate, which is on the Countering Foreign Interference Act. I just like to mention that with the momentum, the coalition of 33 organizations that pushes the 5 political parties to move ahead with the Foreign Transparency Act has succeeded in doing so. And it really creates a momentum in society, and people are paying attention, media are paying attention, and there is a change of attitude towards foreign interference. Politicians from all corners were outraged when former CSIS director warned against the threat from PRC in 2010. Think about a decade or more ago. And some Chinese Canadians called it racism, and to the extent that he has to, it was Fadden, had to recant his report. But look at today, the momentum is moving towards, we need to acknowledge it. We need to do something about it. The bill may not be a perfect bill, but let's do it, that kind of idea. And I post this slide to let you see the quick momentum that is started in May and basically kicks off in June. And then the ball keep rolling, and within a month, the bill is passed. And next. And today, probably you see the headline that the Chinese Canadian Concern Group on the Chinese Communist Party's human rights violation even named people's names. And I think this is still unfolding. The next stage is coming, and it would be on looking beyond the 2 elections, and diaspora communities will be more involved in this stage. And so I hope you keep in touch with this issue and look at it more closely. So thank you. And I post my contact here.
Thank you, Dr. Maria. I think what a wonderful, comprehensive overview of the foreign interference landscape in our country. And with particular emphasis, she touched upon the NCCOP report in her later part of her presentation. So the audience, let's welcome Professor Benjamin Fang to the stage now. And I'm going to flash his presentation. Professor Benjamin, floor is yours, sir. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. So again, I'm going to talk about foreign interference in Canada's academia and democracy. So next, I'm a professor at McGill University, and my research interest is mainly AI and cybersecurity. So I am actually not in political science, right? I'm a computer guy actually, and I'm in software engineering. And then next, so being a professor is one of my hats, and then my another hat is that I'm a co-spokesperson of the Action Free Hong Kong Montreal. Next. So Dr. Maria Zhang has already covered the diaspora aspect. So in the next 10 minutes, I'm going to talk about academics and the democratic process of foreign interference from the CCP. So next. Yeah, next. Yeah, you need to, yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, so I would like to start with a personal story. So in 2018, I was having a sabbatical leave. So as a professor, we're eligible to have a sabbatical leave every 6 years. So and then in 2018, I was having my sabbatical leave in Hong Kong. I was teaching a privacy course in a Hong Kong university. And then at the end of the sabbatical leave, uh, a friend came to me and invited me to give a talk in a company. That company is a 5G enterprise company in China. Let's call that Company H. Okay, Company H. So Company H invited me to give a talk, and I thought it was just an ordinary talk. So I gave a talk about AI and then data mining. And then at the end of the talk, the director came to me and then asked me to stay for another year. Then at that moment, I recognized it was not just a talk; it was actually a job interview. Um, and then they asked me to stay for another year. You know, salary is not a problem, housing allowance, everything is perfect. But the most attractive part is not the money. It's the R&D development, our research and development environment. From what the director told me is that from idea to real life products, their goal is to finish it in 6 months. So this is like a dream for AI professor in Canada. We may, you know, in Canada, we may take us 1 year to apply for grants, and then if we are lucky, we will get a good students, and then a couple years later, we may have something, all right? But their goal is to have it in 6 months. So the idea is that whatever research problem that I can come up with, let's say that for that problem, we have 3 possible solutions. If we have 3 possible solutions, they will allocate 3 research teams to implement all 3 solutions and see which one is the best, and then put the best one on the market, right? So, you know, as an AI professor, we always ask the same question when we have start a new project. That is, where do we get the data from, right? The data is the blood of AI, right? So without data, we cannot do anything. So the director at that time, the response was the following. He said, "Hey Ben, that is not a problem. Whatever data you need, we have the phone, we have the network. Just tell us, we can get it for you," right? So that is a showstopper for me because I have been collaborating with many companies in North America, Microsoft, Google, right? So um, in Canada, we usually have to sign a stack of legal document before we can get a small piece of data. So it looks like privacy is not a concern in that company H. So I cannot accept that. So I gracefully reject the request, saying that I want to become a professor. I want to continue being a professor at McGill. Maybe next. Yeah. And then I come back to Canada, and then the Canadian branch of that company H approached me again, and then they offer me like 3 times of my salary to join their team. Then I asked, what do I need to do, right? You give me 3 times of salary. They just say, you just have to answer our email. That's all you need to do, right? That's too good to be true. Just answering email, you can get 3 times of the salary. So I reject the request again. And now they are trying to recruit my students. So they know that they are not going to get me. So they are approaching my students. And when they approach my students, they do not use company H as the title. They use other company's name. But at the end, if the student want to join the company, at the end they will disclose that it is actually company H. Fortunately, so far all my students, they consult me before they join any companies. So far nobody in my team joined this company yet, but in the future it's hard to say. Next, yeah, thank you. So this is a typical strategy. I call this in Chinese. This is called feed, trap, and killed. This is a very typical strategy used by CCP. The idea is to use some financial benefits to attract the target, and then, for example, once a professor, when they get a large research grant, the first thing we do is to expand our team, right? We will recruit more PhD students, and typically a PhD student takes 4 to 5 years to complete. So we are kind of trapped, right? So they give the funding year by year, and then in the second year they will start. They know that you are kind of rely on them. That's the moment they will ask for some unreasonable requests. For example, IP rights, right? Or ask you to get some information for them, or ask them to, maybe sometimes it's not actually IP right, but the it's called the know-how is very important in the industry of AI, because the industry is moving so fast. So as long as you can get ahead with, compared to your competitor, you can get ahead just a couple of months, it's already a difference, right? So that is a typical strategy. And you can see this strategy is being applied not just to professor, but at the institute level. For example, the Confucius Institute, when they try to inject themselves into some university, it's the same method. Next. Next. Another potential infiltrations or influence from the Chinese government is the CSC scholarship. It's called the China Scholarship Council scholarships. So many professors, they love these CSC students very much. Okay, so let me just tell you how it works, right? So in China, there are many good students, right? They can apply for these CSC scholarships. So when they apply for this, they can go to a foreign university. For example, they can contact a Canadian professor and then tell the professor, hey, I'm a top student in China, and if you accept me as a CSC student in Canada, then I can come to your university for free. All the costs will be sponsored by the Chinese government. So many Canadian professors, they like these students very much. First of all, they are top students, and second, they are free. So approximately 40 students come to Canada every year, and but many professors do not know that before these students come to Canada or go to any foreign countries, they are supposed to sign a loyalty agreement with the CCP government. Basically, that agreement is saying that they need to respect the law of China, even though they are in a foreign countries. And not only the students have to sign this, their family members also need to sign it. So it's like holding their family member as hostage. If they have any violations or do not follow the instructions, right, then they have to pay back the money. They have to pay back the scholarship, which is a large amount for many students. So it's not just because I'm not saying that students are intentionally doing some foreign interference in a Canadian university, but they are potential target to be controlled by the CCP to make them to use them to get some information from the professor or from that specific research programs. So that's a risk that we should consider in many universities. Next. So let's go into the Canadian democratic process. Next. So let's start with this case. This is the most iconic case in foreign interference on elections. So this is Kenny Chiu. He was a former conservative members of parliament in Canada. He is very vocal on many human rights issues, or the Beijing's violation on human rights issues. He's very vocal on Hong Kong, on Uyghurs, on many different issues, and he often encouraged the Canadian government to impose sanctions to the Chinese government. So obviously, the Chinese government doesn't like him very much. Next. And then in 2021, he proposed an act. It's called the Foreign Agent Registry Act. The idea is very similar to the C-17 nowadays. So what he proposes to ask people to register if they are doing lobbying or running a media, and if they are receiving a donation or financial support from the foreign state government. Next. So during his election time, a lot of disinformation appear on many different platforms. So the disinformation is basically saying that this act is discriminating the Chinese people, which is not the case. This is actually a country agnostic act. It can be applied to any countries, not just the Chinese government. And but the disinformation is trying to emphasize that this is a discrimination to the Chinese diaspora communities. And the disinformation was saying that if this act is passed, then all our activities in Canada will be monitored by CSIS, which is not true. But this is a typical strategy used by the CCP. They always try to spin anything that um, and anyone or any act that criticize the CCP to be discriminations. Next. Yeah, so I can briefly talk about how the disinformation was spread. I'm an AI data mining guy, so let's take a look how it works. So it was first spreaded on WeChat. So a very well written post, not just an ordinary post that is written by normal people. They have a pictures, it has graphics, and very long message was first posted on WeChat. And then next. And then that post was further shared on different social media, on TikTok, on WhatsApp, on different social media. And then next. And then the newspaper, this is a newspaper that you can find in every corner in Chinatown, in all the Chinatown in Canada. So it's called the Today Commercial News. It is a well-known propaganda machines sponsored by the Chinese government. And then this newspaper basically copy paste that WeChat message, copy paste many sentences, not exactly, not 100% identical. They make some minor changes, but the key points and many key phrases are the same. So it's very unusual to see a newspaper will copy a WeChat message or social media message and put it on their news article, right? And there are only two possible cases. Case number one is that they maybe the two pieces of information are coming from the same source, or they just copy paste, right? So and then the news article is again being shared back to the social media, which seems to have higher credibility, right? Because it's being published on newspaper, and then the same message is being shared back to China. Again, it's about credibility because now it's from a foreign country, right? It's a foreign Canadian newspaper have that article, so it seems to provide more credibility inside China too. So next, and then after that, based on these articles, many Chinese articles have been written on different platform, on different Chinese websites in Canada, and then all these are being shared back to the social media. So we can next, and then next, and next. Okay, so at the end, Kenny Chiu lost his seat in the 2021 federal election. I would say this disinformation is one of the major contributing factors for his loss. And so this is a very successful campaign to showcase that TCP actually has the capability to influence our research, our election results. But before we go to the next point, I want to emphasize that the influence doesn't start from the WeChat post. Okay, many people they just focus on the disinformation, but actually it takes years to build that atmosphere. The atmosphere was first started actually after COVID-19, right? After COVID-19, there was a movement to emphasize that to basically over exaggerate that there's a lots of discrimination happening against the Chinese community. So these are the seeds. These are the seeds that are planted ahead of time. When they plant this type of seeds, the CCP may not know how they will use it, but when it's the right moment, let's say election time, they will motivate people by using nationalisms, right? to say that they are trying to protect the Chinese rights. So this is how they are going to spin the atmosphere in those WeChat groups into the stance that they want at the end. Okay, thank you. For the next one. So to conclude, I'm going to talk about again Bill says C70. So next, this Bill says C70 has three main aspect. The first one is to enhance the power of CSIS, allowing them to share information to different government bodies or even to different partners. So you can see that there was some problem that the CSIS share some information to the Prime Minister office, but the Prime Minister office ignore that, right? So that hopefully that will address some part of the issues. Next. And then another one is the Registry Act, which is requiring people who conduct, let's say, running a media or doing lobbying or trying to influence the Canadian government policies, they need to register. And then next. And then another one is to have new offenses, right? So people, there's a different level of offenses that can be easier for the law enforcement to bring someone to court. Next. And then again, as Maria just mentioned, the act is not perfect, but we still fully support this act. If possible, it would be nice if there will be some amendments maybe in the future, but this is what our concern group and also for myself to propose the following amendment. The first one is to remove the administrative monetary penalty. Currently, the act basically has a penalty, has a monetary penalty, which is too weak, right? If you can just pay, and then you can start doing influence, that is not a problem, right? So that punishment seems to be too weak. Next. And then another one is that currently now the CCP is buying airtime from some Chinese radio stations in Vancouver, in Toronto. So now the act basically exempts the media to register. So in my opinion, if the media is actually receiving money from the foreign country, they are supposed to register. Next. And then we also propose to have a two-tier architecture or two-tier registrations scheme, which is like the UK model, so that allowing the parliament to impose more accurate restrictions on some selected entities in the enhanced tier. And another one is the technology, right? AI is moving very fast. We're talking about the advancement in every couple of weeks. We have a different methods. Even as an AI professor, we have difficulty to catch up all the advancement. So I think we should have a more frequent reviewing period for this act in order to catch up the new strategy used by the foreign government. Thank you very much. That's all I want to share today. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Benjamin. I think these are some of the very worrisome trends that Professor shared with us this evening, and definitely we are going to discuss a little bit during the question and answer session. And let me hand over the floor to Jessica to kindly moderate this session. Jessica, floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Ahmed. So I just want to say brilliant presentations by both Dr. Feng and Dr. Sheng. I kind of had some questions. Some are more targeted towards each of your presentations, but also some are kind of broad. I wanted to start off with first, due to recent reports that did come out today about drops in support for Trudeau, as well as the Liberal government and more calls for an earlier election within 2024 rather than waiting until 2025. And also due to recent intelligence reports stating that the CCP was more favorable towards Liberal candidates due to the harshness of Conservative candidate stances when it came to foreign interference. So I wanted to pose the question to both of you. If Conservatives were to come into power during this next election, how do you think they would handle the issue of foreign interference, especially in the case of the CCP?
I don't know. Maria, do you have any comment? Yeah.
I certainly find the report of the Commission has emphasized that it's not just one political party. All political parties are susceptible to foreign interference. And the Conservative, there were candidates in the last two elections that were susceptible to be receiving fund from CCP as well. So the influence seems to be more on the Liberal, but also on the Conservative as well. So I think it's important to be vigilant for all political parties to be aware of how they can be influenced or interfered by foreign countries, including China. And what conservative can do, I think they have suffered in the last two elections, so they should have learned lessons and probably bring those lessons into their ruling and be more vigilant about foreign interference.
Yes. So my comment is that I think as Maria mentioned, CCP has an interest to basically infiltrate all parties, right? Not just the liberal. And another thing that political parties may consider is take a look at their internal election process, right? So there was a report, right, in the public inquiry. We see that there was a busload of international students are able to vote for the internal representative of some of the party members. So if that is the case, right, if you put into the extreme case, it is even possible they can use this strategy to vote for the prime minister, because as long as that party, right, win the elections, that leader will become the prime minister. So I think that each party should take a look how they get members, who can vote, and whether there's a specific procedures. There is a procedures to verify the address, at least the citizenships and address, right? So I think that's very important.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just have a complimentary question to both the professors here. Do you think within the limited time that Liberal government is in power, the Bill C-70 would be passed in both, House of Commons and pass the readings in Senate and get the royal assent? And do we have political willingness in our country to get this thing done? And I'm sure both the professors have mentioned in their presentation that we are just catching up. Australia, UK, they have done these things years ago. So going back to the fundamental question, do you think Bill C-70 has its future quickly?
Right. Yeah.
I think if I'm not misreading what my group is talking in the chat, the bill has passed. So today is the third reading in Senate. There is a political will right now. All five parties are committed to it. And if the bill is really passed today, then it's to be brought back to the House of Commons for royal assent. And that would come into place. So hopefully that information is true. And I just tried to check the news, but the news hasn't come up so quickly. But I heard that the bill was passed today. So hopefully that's the case.
Yeah, I think that, yes, I think they have the intention to actually implement this before the next elections. If it's in 2025, then they probably have enough time to actually implement this. And but I would say this is just step one, right? So this bill itself is not enough. For example, in addition to the amendment I just mentioned, right, to remove the administrative fee, right? So there are several things that we need improvement. But in addition to that, this bill does not address disinformation, which is a key component, let's say in the last elections, right? That's why Kenny Chiu and several other MP lost their seats. So, so disinformation is a difficult problem to tackle. There's different solutions. There's a US solutions, Taiwan solutions. So Canadians should carefully consider different options depending on our situations in Canada. Yeah.
Thank you.
And then I have another question. It's more garnered towards Dr. Feng's presentation, given his discussion of academic scholarships. Do you think that academic institutions should be more involved in the handling of the issue of foreign interference? Do they even have the capacity or the ability to do it, considering like what Dr. Feng was talking about with the CSC scholarship, as well as his students being targeted by a similar strategy of the feed, trap, kill? Kind of just wanted to get your opinions on that, being as Dr. Chung and Feng are both academics.
Okay. Yeah. So maybe I go first. So for the university, yes, they have the capability and they already implement this capability. So in every university, I think in the last year, starting from last year, every university now should have a research security director to look into all the funding applications submitted by professor. So currently they are looking at the research proposal funding layer. They try to raise awareness to professor. Again, university can work better and do better job for raising awareness to professor. This is not sufficient now. For the students, I don't think anyone has looked into the student level yet. But eventually, the CSC problem has to be addressed. Also at the government level, they have a research security center that will also look into all the applications, all the collaborations, if it's require federal funding. So both the university and federal level has been taken care of, but again, so some of the companies they are like hackers, right? So once you block their path, they will find an alternative path. You can find that alternative method of collaboration in Alberta, right? There was a very famous AI professor in Alberta he opened an NGO. He opened a non-government organizations outside of university, and then that company H, right, invest in that organizations. So by doing this, it completely skip all the process of evaluation because it doesn't go through the research security center, university research officer. All of them will not be involved. It's a direct investment to his organizations. So you can see that, yeah, this is something that, again, we hope the registry or some of the foreign law may able to address these type of issues.
Thank you. I have one more question before we kind of wrap everything up. Just to kind of tie it back into the overall issue of foreign interference within Canada, as well as more people coming to terms with that it is a phenomenon currently happening within the country and is an important national security threat. Kind of what are the actions that China and the CCP are pursuing that could be seen as a threat to an everyday Canadian, as well as like people that just work like a corporate 9 to 5? They might not be a part of a diaspora group, but how do these actions impact them?
I'll go first. It actually affects all aspects of life and all people. How the CCP spread their narratives is about their ideology, their way of handling things, the way of how they see democratic values. And like what Professor Fong said, students from mainland China, they have to be obliged to Chinese law. And think about if the Chinese narratives is everywhere in Canada, does it mean that our democracy is being undermined by a more totalitarian autocratic system? And a lot of the diaspora groups will be silenced. And disinformation can be spread very easily. And sometimes a mix of a little bit of truth and a little bit and other parts are forced. It's very hard for people to differentiate. And what I see from the Falun Gong experience is the hate propaganda being spread by the CCP to here. It does affect some Canadians' view about the Falun Gong. So they would conveniently just get all the information they learned from the CCP to get into the bigotry. And it would be sidelining and marginalizing diaspora communities who are directly affected by the CCP.
Okay. Yeah. So I agree. So let me re-emphasize what Dr. Maria Zhang has mentioned. So the first one is the students, right? The students. I hope this registry, this C70, will also empower the student to say no when the Chinese government or foreign government ask them to get information for the foreign government, right? So because this bill will allow the students to say, hey, if I do this, I'm violating the law in Canada. This is a very good reason for them to reject the request. So I think the university has a responsibility to actually explain this act to foreign students. For ordinary Canadian, disinformation, as Dr. Zhang mentioned, disinformation, disinformation sometimes is not just something that is false. A very typical strategy used by the foreign government is that they overemphasize something that is a very small piece of some unimportant events. So they amplify this. That piece of information is not false, it's true, but it doesn't deserve that level of attention, right? So so by looking at what they amplify, you can guess what's the intention of that government, right? So so to fight disinformation, maybe I can just quickly elaborate two models, right? Okay, in the US, there's a US model. It's called they have a agency. It's called Global Engagement Center. Global Engagement Center in US. It is a government office, right? Government agencies, which is a very typical US American style, right? There's a problem, set up a government agencies. We will tackle that problem, right? So the approach they do is that they will collaborate with social media companies. They monitor the social media. If there's any disinformation about elections, they will go to ban the account, stop the post, and also they collaborate with social media company. And then they make an announcement on their website, which nobody read, right? Who read the government website. So this is how they work, not very effective. In contrast, the Taiwanese model seems to be much more effective. The approach is not by the government, it's a bottom-up approach. So this started from some civil organizations. They have 3 fact-checking centers. And people have more trust on this fact-checking center because they know they are not controlled by the government. They are not linked to any political parties. And they know they can participate. They can join. And they can do fact-checking on this sentence is true, that sentence is not true, right? And then they have their own social network because it's a network itself. It's a distributed process. So they have their own network to spread the correct information back to the society. So this seems to be much more effective, but it works in Taiwan because they are in the front line. They are right beside the enemy, right? So they have the motivations to work on that. In contrast, in Canada, we don't have that sense of concern, right? So it's not the same level of concern. So it will be harder to run. But still, this is interesting model that we should consider in the future. Thank you.
Thank you both for your amazing answers. I'll pass it back over.
Thank you, Jessica. So the audience, we are going to end our session, but it was a fascinating discussion, as you might have noticed, the way Professor Benjamin and Professor Maria were explaining how the disinformation actually impact even regular citizens of Canada. The audience, we are going to close this session today, but I promise you that we are going to bring more episodes on this topic in the future. And we are going to again invite Professor Benjamin. And of course, as you understand, Dr. Maria is our advisor. She will be always with us on this topic so long we run a number of episodes in the future as well. And also, we are planning to launch a book project on this topic. I think that will be more appropriate to collate all the data and the discussions that you are going to have from our platform. So please watch us in YouTube, in our Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter platforms where we have live stream today. And we'll be very happy to engage you with your questions if you have any in the future on this topic. In conclusion, the audience, I would like to say that foreign interference is a complex and evolving threat that requires a multifaceted and coordinated response. You have heard the experts today. They are trailblazers in our country, and both have years of works and experience in this sector. And you have heard also that sometimes it appears that we Canadians are sort of oblivious about the actual threat, and we don't take things seriously. But I think it is something is changing now. We are taking things a little bit of, I would say, more seriously nowadays, and definitely is going to bear fruit in the future. So through these webinar series, which we just kickstarted today, we aim to foster a deeper understanding of these challenges and contribute to the development of effective strategies to protect our national interests and uphold our democratic values. So once again, thank you for joining us today. We look forward to a productive and enlightening discussions in the future. And I hope you'll find us in all the social media platforms. And once again, on behalf of the Institute, let me express our gratitude to Professor Benjamin Fung and Dr. Maria Chung for being with us and share their thoughts and experience and research expertise. Until we meet next time, stay well and stay fine. Thank you once again for being with us. Bye-bye.